Well, it's a beautiful morning over here in New Mexico.
Yeah, it's a manic Monday.
Manic Monday.
This is the Bengals. We're going old school reference there.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you something, and I think it's very interesting. That moment in time when TARTLE was created.
Yeah. When there are a couple things here. So there was the thought when Jonathan and I, co-founder, came together and had like a discussion. We had an observation. We stopped for a moment and just viewed what was going on around us. We tried to remove ourselves from essentially the reality of the place we were in.
Right.
And we're watching all these people just do things on their cell phones. They weren't like really living in the moment. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. We both have backgrounds in finance. And we're like, oh, can we underwrite people on that data? Like that they're all, creating on their phones. Because, a lot of the world lacks access to financial products. That's another one of the big 7 we have on here, economic equalization. And so we're like, yeah, I think there's something to do here. So, I go home, I'm unemployed at the time, not working, and I'm sitting there in my bathrobe. So I know it sounds like rock bottom, but it was comfortable. It allowed me, it's like one of those things. It's like you put it on, it's like your thinking thing, whatever it might be.
Right.
And I'm sitting there and I typed this huge paper, like 20, 25 pages. Straight through. And it was just all these thoughts, this creativity that came through and be like, what is this thing that we are creating? And I was in that moment. And that moment defined this system that is now in 70 plus countries, allowing you and I to sit here and people all over the world saying the word TARTLE.
Right.
When it was just strictly a very, one-off social thing that happened in Scotland.
So when you look at that beginning, and then how it's evolving.
Yeah.
And we look at, the 70 plus countries, and we look at the world. There was something that happened the other day. We're extremely transparent. So we began to look at some of the issues that the world faces and how we believe or have, maybe you can use a better word than that, of what is happening in the world and this dire issues that we face. And this limited time that we have, and how data can be that bridge to be able to accomplish these issues.
Yes. The internet's been around for a while, but it's been pretty poorly used, frankly. Transmission of information does happen. We've increased the speed at which it can happen, but it's lacked really an incentive for people to share, beyond social media. So when you and I we're having this conversation, it's like this data is going to act as that bridge, and TARTLE is the incentive for building it. Now, when we look at the system and people ask about it, they think it's, it's fantastic. I can control my data. I can earn money, from it. That's well and good because it talks a lot about what in this brief moment is like a big social change, or, political highlight that politicians want to talk about is this, hoarding of data and its value and all these other things. That's just one small aspect. But when we begin to expand and look at the greater holistic nature of what this tool has the ability to help with, you and I discussed and the rest of the team, what is it that can be solved? If data is the bridge builder, if data defines our actions, behaviors, wants, likes, dislikes, all of these different things and how we interact on our daily life because we're recording so much of it, it's important that that information be used in a collective nature to define what our future is going to look like if there are very pressing problems that we may have facing us as total, as, humanity, as one single race. So when we're having this discussion, we're like, well, if we look at data as a fundamental platform for us to be like, now we should focus on what we should put our resources towards because we brought all this data collectively together. What are those major things that data can help us solve? Increase our timeline, increase our probability of existence, increase the lifespan of one single individual, right? possibly curing something, creating that vaccine, moving polluted waste out of some of the greatest, rivers in the world, sacred rivers to some cultures. And it's not just getting the bulldozer and removing it, but working with the consciousness of the people there in their data to recognize why they're putting trash in the river. Where is that issue? Where's that behavioral thing that is causing them to pollute something that is so important to them? What is that? But we understand that through that data and through this intangible thing, we can make very tangible material choices. And these will change our longevity. They will allow us the opportunity to effectuate on our future for the good or the bad. The question is, we need to make that choice. Data is this agnostic, observable thing. And so if we're using this tool to bring it all together amongst all these people, and they can get an economic gain out of it, but also collectively solve the problems that are truly threatening this planet and themselves and their loved ones, it's important that that really be a core focus. That's the core focus of sharing data. That's the core focus for what a politician or a research holder should be dealing with, not focusing on all these other things. This is the real story. This is the thing that we need to have some attention on. And we've broken that down into 7 major things that, as a person on TARTLE, not a user, but a person, a human being on TARTLE, can say, okay, I want to share my data towards these causes, or I have preferences towards these topics. And then after I have earned whatever it might be for sharing that information, I can then give my earnings back, whatever portion of it, to whatever specific cause that I really care about. So it becomes this full life cycle approach. I've given you the data, and now I've also given more money to the people that define things with the resources to make that change. And if you have the collective power of 5 billion wallets coming together to focus on one specific thing, we have all the resources and all the information to build the technology or whatever it might be to go solve that issue.
Because as well as I do, there's this whole desire to escape, like this escapism to, we're going to build a different colony on Mars, or we're going to, in this macro view, or, the Earth, frankly, is all effed up. And, we're beyond the point of being able to fix it or save it, humanity, and then there's this like real nihilistic view of the planet. And then there's this of the haves and the have-nots, and what the haves are deciding that they need to do or not do. When we look at TARTLE, and there's, we always call ourselves bridge builders, and we see this bridge. The question that we, and you and I have shared this, the question that we ask is, do we have the technology and do we have the resources? If we truly all united, could we save the planet?
Right. You asking me that, and I think in my own mind, from a logical analysis, absolutely. And here's how I logically look at this analysis. We've created all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have the ability to create them, we have the ability to reverse them. Everything in this world needs to be in balance and equilibrium. We just need to look to what the inverse is. And if these resource holders, these people are saying, in a nihilistic view, the planet's effed, I'm not going to be responsible for it. I don't want to be responsible for these people that don't want to learn. It's time for me to go and start setting up shop somewhere else. And they're taking all the resources with them. What does that leave the other 8 billion people with when 1% goes? A planet to burn on? What's more important? The key for us is to take those 8 billion plus that 1% of it and build a bridge between them. Build a bridge between the people that need to share this information, that want to solve their problems, and want to connect with those resource holders so that they can collectively come together as a team and solve what can be solved, rather than say, there's nothing left to solve. It's not worth saving. Of course it's worth saving. It's extremely important. You wouldn't have the ability to go to Mars or the moon or set up a moon base or do these things if it wasn't for the resources of this one specific planet.
Yeah, and you look at it and you see all these agencies that are out doing, we'll take human rights, for instance. That's our third one, and we see all these different agencies, and there's all these little, and what upsets me is there's all these little, they're all for human rights, but then how we get there, in these higher educational facilities, how we get there, what works the best, what doesn't, instead of coming together and saying, I've got this data in this way. Yeah, we may be a Catholic organization, but I have this information. Here's a Christian organization, that we've been working in Africa pretty heavily. Here's what we've decided. Here's a, however it may be, here's a Russian agency. However that works, it's like, how do we get those people speaking to each other? Because in the end, saving the world, saving this, big blue planet that we have, it's basically blue, is the outcome. And if we only have 40 to 70 years, and people need to let that sink in, that means their children, they may see the end of the world. That's scientists, everybody's coming out all from all different types of higher learning educations, whether they're in China or whether they're in India or whether they're in the United States or Canada, doesn't matter. They're all coming out and saying, we have 40 to 70 years.
How do you incentivize the sharing of knowledge between person and person?
Yes.
And then once they have those answers, how do they meet the individual that they collected the data from at their level? Not to say, here's the model, apply it to everybody. How do you meet them at their level to elevate them to where that is, rather than say, you need to form fit to this?
Yes, that's what's been happening. It's always been this form fitting. And I think when we look at, saving this world, and we look at saying, oh, okay, yeah, I'm this organization and I have this ethos, to get to human rights because I believe in this. If you really sit down and have a conversation, and I know this world right now is not willing to do that in its current state, because of everything that, whether people are blaming social media and they're blaming the news media and they're blaming everybody but themselves. And I look at TARTLE and this ability that we be able to have to meet people at their level and say, not only are we going to incentivize you, but do you want a better world?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for you?
And we don't force it.
Right.
There's an awareness to it. There's no coercion. It's just an educational factor and an opportunity for you to say, I've shared my data. Do I want to go beyond that now? How can I double down on these things that really matter? And we have these 7 major things. And when we looked at a lot of the stuff that is troubling the world, a lot of it is coined in a very negative, combative, divisive sense, a very separative sense. So when we talk about bridge building, it's important that the vocabulary of how we define these topics builds a bridge between the thought, the emotion, the sharing, whatever that might be. So when people talk about one specific one, like climate change, right? We looked at that, we're like, or global warming. It has this deep negative perception. But what about climate stability? That's a stabilization. It builds the bridge between the unstable and the stable. It builds the bridge between the non-believers and the believers, the data goers and the non-data goers, right? The agnostics and the non-agnostics. It brings those together to say, let's harmonize in solving this thing and let's stabilize the world. Let's not try and fight the climate, but stabilize with it.
Yeah, because whenever you look at these so-called haves and have-nots, and I had brought that earlier, and then we're seeing it right now more than ever, this divisiveness, thinking Bill Gates is putting chips in people, or you have these, elite billionaires that are, we have almost like this craziness that's going about, and it's on both sides of the house. So I'm not pinning one side or the other, but I mean, we have these extremely divisive leaders that are, that are saying it's my side. That's it. No bridges. Let's put up walls and build everything around it. And you're seeing that on like I said, you're seeing that on both sides. Where we're coming into it with I think a fresh perspective.
As a third party.
Yeah, as a third party, where we're coming in. That's a great terminology. Where we're coming in and saying, yeah, I get it. I get you don't like this. I get that you're seeing this issue, but the real question is, and you brought this up, the real question is, how do they view for tens of thousands of years that river's sacred, but at the same time, they're willing to take a bunch of trash and throw it into the river?
Yeah.
Let's work on that disconnect
Yeah.
and not worry about whether you like Burger King or McDonald's.
Yeah, let's not look at the polarization. Let's focus on this unsolved disconnect.
Yes.
Because this unsolved disconnect can be solved through data, and it allows us to focus on things that really require the focus. Not putting our attention on things that aren't really solving it.
Right.
They're secondary, tertiary issues. They're not the primary thing. We as human beings are the key driver for all of these issues. We've built them up over time. The question is, do you want to take responsibility to solve it? And we at TARTLE, with this tool, challenge you to do so. We want you to be on that journey. We challenge the world and the resource holders to say, are we going to willingly come together with the right incentive and the right data to solve this thing that is meeting us in the face?
Because
or are we going to watch this moment pass and then not be able to hold on to it once it's gone?
Because literally we have this moment and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, at 40, 70 years, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, so whether you want to make escape pods, you know, and fly to your perfect little world that you've created because you have, you know, privilege and let this be, you know, blow up. And you know, and I think it's really good for people to get a visual of that, to get a visual of looking at, you know, we looked and was looking at the Serengeti and all that, and just think in your mind of this, you know, these animals just dying because it's just so hot. You know, it's gone past the point of, and picture, you know, Florida and California, if you're in the United States, just being completely underwater. You know, I mean, you can literally take each of these 7 issues that we have, and when you, and I know it's burdensome, like you had talked about, you know, we had talked about in a previous episode, looking at your death, you know, and leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. It's like, picture what's going to happen in 40 to 70 years. And then your relatives are those people, you know, if you have a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old son, he's going to be involved in this.
Yeah. Jason, no dollar earned over the course of your life will ever buy you more time.
Nope.
It is what it is. The question is, do you want to redefine those moments before that time's up? Simple as that. We are not political in any sense of saying that, you know, these are important causes here. This is not a political thing. We're looking at it in the sense of data, and we're on the side of life. And I want that to be abundantly clear. Whatever your ideology, political standing, background, demographic, socioeconomic stance, it doesn't matter. We're on the side of life and helping preserve that life and the value of that life. And if we can do that with data, then these are the things we should focus on, because these are the most forward-facing moments that we are going to have to make choices in. Because when those moments pass, time is up. And you're not going to be able to buy more time after that moment's passed.
Yeah, and if we have that shared responsibility.
That's correct.
And we're creating vast amounts of data. They can't even keep we talked about this, the data warehouses and everything else. All this data is just coming in. So we're creating all this data, and then we see this responsibility we have to the globe. And we see that we believe that data can solve this, and you're already doing something. Every time you go on social media, every time you go on a website, there's data that's being created. So you could take something that you're doing in your daily normal life, wherever you're at in the world, that's agnostic, and turn it around and say, with me sharing this, maybe you haven't ever give to a not-for-profit organization. Maybe it's something that you've looked at, but you've never really thought about it. It's as simple as saying, you know, I believe in peace. I believe that this globe should have peace.
Or I care about it.
I care about it, and I've never really given to anything before, but I know I'm creating this data daily. You know, I'm automatically doing this, so why not I just say, hey, let me take the data and give it towards peace, because I believe that we need a world full of peace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, TARTLE is really that simple.
Yeah, and this is not meant to be fundamentally confusing. This is not rocket science. This is a science of human nature. And human nature is something that is easily understood when you ask a question. When you don't look at the outcomes, but focus on the causes. And that cause is the human being. We've been trying to understand human nature by just looking at effects all the time. but we never understood the root cause. We never took the time to study it. We didn't put the focus on it. And now we have the opportunity to do so. The tool is here to do so. And I'd love it if you could just name what these 7 things are that we want to focus on as the altruistic side of what's happening with this tool.
Yeah, this list here is just amazing to me, and maybe I can have you just give a kind of like a brief synopsis of each one. So number 1, we believe, is climate stability.
Yeah, at the core of everything, we cannot survive as human beings to have world peace,
right?
To have a positive life or growth or evolution if there's nothing to evolve on.
Right.
If we have no ground to stand on healthily, then what's the sense of anything else? What's the sense of trying to solve politics if there's no world for politics to live about?
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So when we look at this, stabilizing our climate is numero uno.
Right. And then number 2, I'm trying to look at it over the light here.
Yeah.
Number 2, educational access.
Educational access. It's all well and good for everyone to have economic resources, but unless we become knowing and live in experience, we have no wisdom. So after we've stabilized our climate, then we have to take the time to learn from these mistakes, learn from these experiences, and then we can act upon them properly in a wise manner. And that will help move into other categories, right? Other things that are important for how we then start to define what society should look like, even a global society.
Right. And number 3 is human rights.
Human rights. These to us are inherently obvious. It's a human right. There are 7.8 billion human beings. They should all share in that same right, regardless of the border that you sit in.
Yes.
So if a climate is stabilized, we become wise and educated in what we're doing. Everybody should share in those rights. Now we can all understand what those rights are and have them applied properly.
Right. And then number 4 is peace.
Peace. Great. Stabilized climate. We're becoming wise. We've given rights to everybody. It lacks that fighting. We find peace. We find that harmony in all of us working together now. We understand the value, the benefit of collectiveness, of unifying our efforts and our data and our thoughts and behaviors towards these causes.
And decentralization and all that plays a role in peace.
Right. Because you then, decentralization says, let's give power back to the person creating it.
Right.
Let's not pass it off to a central authority. We've all learned self-responsibility. And with that self-responsibility, you can find whatever that peace might be. Internal peace, or peace within a group of people or a tribe or a whole nation or many nations.
Number 5 is public health.
Public health. Great. So we've stabilized our climate. We've become educated and wise, right?
Human rights.
We've applied human rights.
Given
peace has come together. Now that stuff is stable and us living together. Now let's figure out how we can live longer together.
Yes.
Okay? Now we can start materially looking at extending life rather than extending life for us still making bad decisions. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want to extend bad decisions. I want to extend the best, the brightest, the wisest, the most harmonizing decisions.
And then number 6 is government and corporate transparency.
Yeah. So after we have come together as a people to define what we want, we can then give that up to the people that can speak on our behalf. Not for us, but we tell them what needs to be said so that they can go as a speaker and talk with all these other nations and other people that are speakers, not leaders, but people speaking for that group. That's what it is.
And then finally 7 is economic equalization.
Economic equalization. Money, in my mind, of solving everything is at the bottom of the totem pole. Because after we've fixed all this other stuff, all the most important things in life, then we can say, let's uplift each other financially so that we can start doing something with resources in our own small groups. We've learned how to interact well. We become less competitive in the sense of, resources are so completely finite that when we spend our money, we start to spend it wisely. And when we earn it wisely. And there's no reason we cannot economically elevate everyone at the same time. And we have the ability to do that with the data. You're getting paid for sharing. Where you never had opportunity, it's now been created.
So I want to end in this. So it all sounds well and good. And there are people that are sitting there like, oh, perfect. Alex, that's so awesome. You seem such an optimist.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, you're such an optimist for the world. It's just this fuzzy, optimistic feeling. I mean, there's almost like this sarcasm
Yep.
that goes right along with it. What would you say to those people that doubt, not just TARTLE, but doubt humanity?
I think they doubt the value of their own life. If you think that we should have some nagging, pessimistic view, finite view of this world, that it is completely limited and that we are not capable of positive evolution and change for ourselves, what value do you see in life? I'm optimistic because regardless of where you are in this world or what stance you're at, you are a human being. And I want that value of what it means to be recognized as a human being to ring through people's consciousness. That's why I'm so deeply optimistic, because I've seen it through my own life and my own experience of that optimism and where it's brought me and what it's allowed to bring other people along with me, like yourself and the team and the development and the people that back this and the people that join. They feel in that optimism. They feel in that future. And what do you want to do? Not take a risk because you're not optimistic about a human being because you really don't see the value in life? You want to be pessimistic and take no risks about it? It's not about taking risks for the sense of doing risks, right? It's about taking risks because you know it's the right thing to do. I am a walking piece of my own experience. I feel that own wisdom in what it means to value other human beings. I know what those outcomes look like. And whether they're great or little, there'll always be a naysayer on the other side. But I will continue to push that optimism towards these values, towards a future that I can visualize in my mind, that other people might have said was something that was way out of reality, that's a total failure, it'll never come to be. But I've always beaten that line. I've always towed their ideologies and said, I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to take those more steps. I'm going to walk off the edge of that cliff and continue to float past it. I'm not going to fall. I'm just going to move into a world that you never saw. Because in your limited perception of what it means to be a human being, stops you right there in your thought. It ends your possibilities. It ends your idea of probability for what it means to evolve. You lack the evolution as a person to come in and say, that's not possible. That's negative. Your view is too optimistic. Says who? Do you have the right view? Because from what I'm looking at, and you telling me that this isn't something that can be solved, you're one of the biggest problem causers. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to wake you up. I'm here to shake you on your shoulders to knock the untruth and nonsense out of your perspective that there are 70 years left and there's more to this world than just you. And you could not operate, you could not exist if it wasn't for all the people here across this planet having all the interactions and exchanges with one another. We all coexist. Wake up, expand the perspective, take the horse blinders off and see what is right in front of you.
So if somebody wanted to be a part of TARTLE and they want to take that first step, maybe they're pessimistic and they're like, okay, I heard you, you convinced me, Alex, I'm ready to take the first step. How can they do that? Even in a pessimistic mind, how would they do that?
Research. If you don't want to be coerced, and I'm not here to coerce, I'm here to look at it in a logical, rational, educational format. I'm here to champion value, self-value, and humanity's value. Do the research. You and I publish so much material. Our team's designed to make sure that things are so transparent. We're working for your benefit. Comb through it. Look for a hole. Look for us bullshitting you. You'll never find it. We have no incentive to lie, to put things in a black box, to make things confusing. We have no incentive to coerce you. We're here to champion your choice. It's your free will. We're not trying to bend you to make it work for us. It's not some model we're applying to everyone. We want to meet you at your level. So if you're unsure on where to start, don't sign up yet. Do your research. Because if that's what's required for you to figure out for yourself, I can't tell you. I can't make you learn something. You have to learn it for you. It's a Socratic approach to life. I'm not going to define what your world is. You need to step up and define it.
So let's say they've done the research. They're like, okay, I'm in. How easy is it for someone to sign up at TARTLE?
If you can press your thumb onto a phone's flat surface, you can sign up for TARTLE. It's that easy. If you have the ability to use your thumbs, talk to text, whatever it might be, any sort of accessibility option, you'll be able to create an account. Everything's there allowing you to do it. It's time for you to make that choice by going to tartle.co and clicking on that button that says Get Started.
And my last question, this is going to be a heavy one. Are you ready?
I feel like I've gone on a lot of heavy stuff.
This one's really heavy. What if there's someone out there, and maybe they're in the United States, maybe they're in India, Mongolia, it doesn't matter. We have a map in front of us. We could literally name all the countries. And they're like, I agree with you, Alex. These 7 things the world needs to change. You know, I'm 20 years old. I believe in these things, but I don't know if me signing up for TARTLE, I don't think I'm significant enough as a person. Why should I even take the effort to sign up TARTLE? I'm just a 20-year-old just trying to survive.
Have you ever taken a measure of what your self-worth might look like? What one little piece of information that you've created, have you ever seen what its impact is? I doubt it.
Yes.
But when you sign up, try it. See how far one little piece of information can effectuate something very important. If you don't think you have any value, I don't want you to think that you don't have it. I want you to know. So go on. Try and prove to yourself how little value you have. Prove to me. Show me. Because I want to prove to you that that mindset was false. That every single one of us has something deeply, deeply important to share.
And collectively, we have all the power.
We have all the power
To save the world.
Thank you.